I am so excited for this game. Welcome back to Football Forecast, and today I'll be previewing Newcastle versus Barcelona. I mean, this has to be the best game of the round. I think this is a classic Champions League match. It's at Newcastle, at St James's. We know what St James's can be in these massive matches, and I do believe Newcastle have the ability to take something from this game against Barcelona. We know it's going to be absolutely rocking there, and they're the sort of team when they're on a high, when they're playing at their best, when their fans are at the best, when the players are feeling the best, they can be the sort of team to win these games like against Barcelona. So these two teams haven't played recently, but what I'm going to look at now is just a quick look at form. And as you'll sort of see, it all speaks at a Barcelona win. Barcelona have won 6-0 against Valencia. They drew to Rayo Vallecano. They won against Levante, they won against Mallorca, and they won against Como in a friendly. So they're all saying that Barcelona are the favourites going into this game. And they are the favourites in fairness to Barcelona. They really are. Barcelona are the better team. They've got more quality. There is no doubt about that. And I don't think you'd find a Newcastle fan that would be so delusional to actually say that Newcastle have more quality than Barcelona. Looking at Newcastle, they've only won one game out of the four. They've won two against Wolves. They obviously lost to Liverpool. They could have won that game and they should have won that game. And that is a big game I'm going to talk about in terms of St James's, but also Newcastle in these massive games when I get to it. And then they obviously drew 0 against Leeds and 0 against Villa. I actually think they played well in most of these games, and they probably more should be taken to the 9 or 10 points. Instead, they've ended up with only 5 points from a possible 12. I'm a big believer in home advantage, and this is my key reason why I truly believe Newcastle can win this game against Barcelona. And I mean, Newcastle have one of the toughest places and atmospheres right now to go in the Premier League. Teams struggle to go to Newcastle. You have to be at your absolute best, or you have to rely on Newcastle making mistakes. We saw that against Liverpool this year. The only reason Liverpool really got anything from that game is Newcastle got a red card, and Newcastle didn't have a striker because Isak was on strike. They now don't have that concern. They've got Voltemade, who I really like, and I think will really do well for Newcastle. I really trust Eddie Howe with strikers, and I think he knows how to get the best out of one. He got the best out of Isak, Callum Wilson, and I think he'll get the best out of Nick Voltemade. And I really truly believe Newcastle, this place can win you games of football. I really truly believe that. I know this is like hysterical. It's like, oh, atmospheres can't win you games of football. This is the sort of place I'm telling you that can win a game of football from nowhere. It is that good of an atmosphere. We've seen it in every Premier League game. Teams have gone to Newcastle and just don't know what to do. It's very similar actually to Liverpool, I think, on Champions League nights, this place. We saw the prime example of this is PSG. Newcastle, a very similar scenario. First game back in the Champions League for 20 years. Newcastle, PSG. Everyone ruled them out. I thought they could get a point. Maybe they could find a way to nick a 1-0 win. Newcastle go in there and smash PSG off the park. Look, this wasn't the PSG team of today, but it was all about momentum. The players that scored, the quality wasn't there for Newcastle, and Newcastle had a rather poor season and poor start, very similar going into this game, and they won 4-1, and they actually dominated PSG, and I think we could see a similar scenario against Barcelona. I truly believe this, and I really don't think Barcelona are ready for what's going to come at them. So I'm going to start with Barcelona, and this is the Barcelona lineup that they went out with against Valencia, where they won 6-0. They did rest a couple of players in this lineup, which I'm going to bring up. But in left back, they had Martin, and this is because Balde's not available. Straight away, that's a weakness. He might be a good player. I haven't seen a lot of him, and Barcelona are very good at producing young players. But straight away, going into a Newcastle United atmosphere, it's hard. It's not the same, I don't think, as a La Liga atmosphere. It's different Newcastle United, especially in a Champions League now. That's what I believe. And then you've got Kubasi, Eric Garcia, and Koundé. I'm not denying this isn't a good defence, but I don't think it's at a top level. And also you'd expect Eric Garcia to come out for probably Christensen, because Ronald Araujo is just out of favour completely. But where I think Newcastle United might be able to exploit is on the counter-attack, because I think this lineup because of how Hansi Flick's going to want to play, he's going to want to have his defenders like up on the halfway line. That's sort of what we're used to with Barcelona. And I think if they do that, players like Anthony Gordon, and I would definitely be picking Anthony Elanga for this game. I know he hasn't started at his best, can really exploit this high line. And I think that if they have a striker like Voltemade who's really there to finish, I really think this can be a weakness that Newcastle United can definitely exploit. I think there's weaknesses in that defence. I don't think it's a top defence. I think there's parts of it are like Koundé, very good defender. Kubasi, also excellent defender. But I think the other two defenders are very weak and aren't quite to the standard. In midfield, it's Pedri and it's Caicedo, who's basically the Busquets region. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they've also got Bernal, who can play there as well. So it's just amazing how they keep producing these midfielders over and over again. But once again, whoever they play next to Pedri is going to be an experience because Frankie de Jong's out. You also look at the other players that are out for Barcelona midfield. You've got Gavi out. So straight away, you've already narrowed down a couple of players that maybe would have been better in an atmosphere like this. And that's what I'm really going to keep looking at. So then on the left, I think they'll pick Marcus Rashford. I think Rashford, this feels like a very Rashford game to play. I don't really think they have another option because Lamine Yamal's injured. And then they'll probably go with Fermin Lopez in the 10 because he played so well against Valencia. They could go with Dani Olmo, but I just think, why wouldn't you just play Lopez? He's playing well and he's performing well. But they definitely could go with Dani Olmo. On the right, I don't think they'll put Rooney Bargiel. Shout out to the FM players. Everyone knows who Rooney is basically just because of that. He was at Copenhagen and he's been signed from Barcelona. Bit of a wonder kid. And I don't think Rooney Bargiel will be picked. I think he will go with Rafinha off the right. And up front, I thought it would be Lewandowski, but I just had a look through and I have watched a bit of Barcelona. They haven't played Lewandowski starting, so it may well be Ferran Torres. I still prefer Lewandowski from what I've seen. I think they really lack his aerial presence, and maybe that's more. I don't think it matters as much now because Lamine Yamal's crossing was really why that was. So maybe without Lamine Yamal, he is less of an effect, Lewandowski anyway. But I do feel like Lewandowski could be useful for this sort of game. Just before I get into the Newcastle United lineup, one of the key concerns I think for Newcastle is when they play in UEFA competitions, and this is understandable, is the fact that Newcastle United don't really have the squad depth or aren't used to competing sort of every sort of like a couple of days. They can't do one game on Saturday, one game on Wednesday, one game on Saturday. But I don't think this should be as much of a problem for this game because they actually played their last game on Saturday and now they're playing on Thursday. So that's a 5-day gap compared to the usual maybe 4 or 3-day gap. So this should benefit Newcastle United being fully fit for this game. So I don't think this shouldn't be a problem as usual. So for this team against Wolves that they played out, in goal they had Pope. I don't think there's any reason to change that. I don't rate Pope hugely, but playing out from the back isn't a problem, so why would you really pick Aaron Ramsdale when he's never going to change the keeper? Right back, Trippier. This would be the first change. Lewis Hall is available for Newcastle United. I'd play Livramento at right back and Hall at left back. I can understand, though, if he doesn't do this because of sort of experience. Trippier in these sort of games is sort of playing maybe you want, so maybe he will stick with Kieran Trippier. Then at centre-halves, you'll go with Shah and Dan Burn. He was not going to change that. They've been rock solid at the back. Two very good centre-halves that go completely underrated, in my opinion. They're outdoing players like Swin Botman and Malik Chow, so two very good defenders who are getting picked over them. And this is the really important positions. Bruno, Tonali, Joelinton, they might not have the technical ability of Pedri or whoever Barca play in their midfield, Fermin Lopez. But the one thing they do have is absolute work rate, and they will work so hard for Newcastle, and that is the key for me. This game's going to be all about work rate. Get the crowd up, play that pressing football, but also be conservative enough to just hit teams on the break, and this midfield's vital for that. This midfield is what makes Newcastle United under Eddie Howe. And then on the right, I'm picking Anthony Elanga. I'm taking out Murphy. I think in the game where you're not going to have as much of the ball, this suits Elanga. Elanga was a very threatening player for Newcastle United against Liverpool, and I think he can do the same thing up against an inexperienced left back. Get that pace in behind, and that will really help. Elanga is absolutely rapid. We all know this. And on the left, I would pick Gordon. I know Gordon's been in not great form, but I think you go to Anthony Gordon and you rely on his pace once again. And he finally gets to play off the left. He's been suspended for Champions League, and then he wasn't, so not Champions League, sorry, suspended for Premier League, and he also wasn't available to play. They were also picking him down the middle because Isak was on strike. And up front, I'm going with Voltemade because I think Voltemade is a real threat. And this leads me on to my last point. Where can Newcastle United exploit Barcelona? They don't have the technical ability, and I don't think they have the footballing ability as much as Barcelona definitely have. But what they do have is they have aerial strength and height. They have a very big team. That's something that Newcastle United definitely need to use. Shah, Burn, Joe Linton, Voltemade, they're all massive. Use that height advantage as much as you can. Be a threat from set pieces. Play the game the way you want to. Use long throw-ins. Use long free kicks. Basically play how you played when you were 10 men down to Liverpool. If they play like that, Newcastle United have every chance of winning this game. And that's what I think will happen. I think Newcastle United will get it spot on. We know Eddie Howe's a great coach. I think Eddie Howe's an incredibly underrated coach, and he's very good at managing with what he's got. So for that reason, I'm going 3-1 win for Newcastle. I don't think Barcelona are going to realise what has hit them. And that is my score prediction. Please let me know your score prediction in the comment section. Do you agree with me? Can Newcastle United win this game? And if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more Champions League content and of course Premier League content, Spanish football content, and anything that you really want to see on the channel. Let me know what you want to see on the channel.